Welcome, everyone, to our weekly HDI Local Chapters live stream show. Our show is brought to you by Robert Half, which is a talent solutions firm and leading provider of technology professionals needed to build, deploy, and operate technology in this cloud and digital world. You can browse available candidates, you can search for jobs, and you can access additional valuable information on hiring and career insights at roberthalf.com/technology. All right, let's get on with our show. Today, very special guest for me personally. It's a really good friend of mine, Kelly Fetick. Hi, Kelly.
Hello.
So Kelly is the CEO of Landis Consulting Group, a technology staffing and recruitment firm. And your background, Kelly, is in hiring, attracting, and retaining talent that spanned over 15 years. And you're really passionate about connecting talented people with the best companies in the region. So welcome to the show, first off. And
Thank
secondly,
you.
let's talk about Kelly, so you are the CEO, you founded this company. Why get into the technology staff? I don't think I've ever asked a recruiter on our show, why did you get into this? So give us a little bit of about Kelly.
Well, it's not too glamorous. I kind of just stumbled into a staffing job right out of school back when, back in the early 2000s. So it's my background. So that's what I've been doing since I started working per se, but I didn't really know about the industry before that. So it wasn't necessarily a goal. But when I learned about the job itself, people, conversations, building relationships, helping this person find this job and making that match. And, I liked everything about it. And I really just dove in head first and haven't looked back. So that's really all I know at this point professionally.
Cool. And one of the things on our show we like to talk to people about is opportunities in technology or things surrounding technology. And I don't think we've ever, maybe I'm wrong, and my producers can correct me, but I don't know that we've ever had somebody on the show to talk about this as a career. Maybe we did way back, but it's interesting because I love to work with, whether I'm looking for a job or, in the management position where I'm working with, firms like yours to find people. You don't think necessarily sometimes is like a career, but it's really a lot of talented people get started that way or finish that way or do their whole thing because, like you said, you get to help people. If you really like helping people, and always, well, maybe not always. I guess it's not always a happy note when you have to tell somebody they didn't get a position, but still you're helping them and eventually they do get something and it's exciting. But today we're going to talk about the ongoing tech talent war. So Kelly, I like to think of the job market, at least in the technology space, is kind of similar to the housing market. Sometimes it's a buyer's market, sometimes it's a seller's market. Where do you see it as today for at least in the technology space of careers finding, job finding?
So in that analogy, it's a candidate, it's a job seekers market, right? Everybody is hiring right now. There's so many jobs that are posted online. I mean, I think the job, what are we at? 10.9 million jobs I think they had last month in our country. So it's only increasing, but the hiring itself is not necessarily, in line with that. And a lot of it is just because the talent is not there in a lot of cases, especially when you narrow into tech. So there's a lot of contributing factors, which we can get into. But it's one of those things where if you are a job seeker and if you have one of those especially sought after jobs and skills and you're in that area, whether it's, AI or machine learning or cybersecurity or those areas that companies really need right now. I mean, the world is your oyster, basically.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. You talked about that. It's not a new thing, right? A job seekers market, but it seems to be there's a talent shortage. What do you think some of the contributing factors are to this talent shortage? I mean, from what I'm hearing, tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like a lot of companies, employers, whatever you want to call them, are having a hard time finding or attracting people to jobs. So what do you think some of the factors are?
Well, I mean, I think as far as just the world itself, I mean, we're in a period of just technological advancement and changes, right? So everything's changing so rapidly. So with that being said, you need the people to implement the change. So that's just something that's only been growing. And then you factor in the pandemic. We've had 18 months where a lot of times maybe things got put on hold, or maybe you had planned on doing this before, but now everything's just being rushed and pushed forward now. So everything is just moving so fast. So where we had this maybe challenge before, and there's people are always looking for the same types of roles. I mean, it's only been exacerbated. It's just increasing by the day, which is a good thing. But we just need to make sure we can find the people who.
So I'm hearing of this thing. This is something that's interesting to me. I'm hearing this thing called the Great Resignation. Like, so what the heck is that?
Dude, I mean, so I can't tell you how many people in the last 2 weeks alone have asked me, what is this? Is this real? Is this a thing? And it is a thing. You'll see it on the news. Like, people are just changing jobs. People are considering leaving their job that they're in, but they're also thinking about making these big career shifts. I mean, or changes. You might have been a software developer before, but tomorrow you want to be a chef. I think being in staffing, we have a bit of a unique perspective because we are talking to a lot of people every day, all day about what they're looking for in a job, and we're talking to employers too. So it's definitely, I can validate it's real, and really interesting too.
Yeah, and you talk about, and I have done a little bit of research on that myself. That's why I brought it up. I thought it was interesting because I was like, what the heck is this Great Resignation? It makes it sound like this great government movement. And really it's actually a kind of a grassroots. It's kind of like, I'd say kind of grassroots. People are just making their minds up that they're going to quit their job or quit their career. I have to tell you, and I think this has come from the pandemic and people either losing their jobs during the pandemic or working remotely, and they've really given it some thought. I have to tell you, for the people that have been listening to this show and the pre-show, really, because I don't really talk about this a lot in the show, but I'm starting to get into and I learned it's called homesteading. It's kind of like I got chickens, I'm getting garden beds in, and I'm thinking, wow, maybe I could do this. So not that I'm going to quit my job, but it makes you think of things like, I don't know, maybe I don't, because I read an article today before the show about this. I was still doing a little bit more research, and so why are people resigning? Kelly, we talked about this last week. I think when I talked to you, I really want to know why people are considering the resignation, whether it's from their job, their career, whatever. So what are some of the things some of the reasons that people would want to quit their job or leave their current place? What they've learned from COVID.
Well, one thing that I feel like is, so the Great Resignation, I mean, you hear that and you think, oh, everybody's going to quit their job and stay at home and, just collect unemployment if they can. I mean, but it's not necessarily, I feel like there's a new term that's being thrown around, the Great Reshuffle, which I think is a better descriptor because it's not necessarily that people are just resigning from their jobs and not doing anything else. I think that it's more about people have figured out more about what they care about. They've had we've been living through a global crisis for the last year and a half. So that gives you a lot of time to really consider on many levels, what your priorities are, what you care about, what's most important to you, what's going to make you fulfilled in your career. Yeah. And, your job today might not necessarily match those things. So, it's not necessary. My opinion is, it's not, some people just, they might have decided they don't want to work anymore, but I think it's more so people are just thinking about where they want to go in their career, whether it's a new job or a new direction altogether. Yeah. Or it's, what do I need to do to find a new employer that'll really be able to fulfill these things that are now really important to me that I now have realized.
Yeah. So I think what I've been looking at, my thoughts on this are, because the pandemic has lasted so long, and some of these people, they say hopefully when you get up to an age close to retirement, you're making the prime money of your life, hopefully. And if you're working from home, you're not buying new office clothes, except maybe a shirt, you don't have to buy everything else. You don't have the transportation costs. Maybe they saved up enough money that they're like, you know what? I was 2 years away from retirement, but now I can do it. And that's opening up positions for other people. Cause my wife and I were talking about this. If you go around to our local, and you live in my area. You go to the local restaurants and the retail shops. There's everybody's hiring. I was mentioning to you, there was a restaurant in Oakland that said closed indefinitely due to no employees. Maybe those folks are actually finding jobs that are in the professional fields that they're looking into, maybe chefs or technology. And that's just like you said, it's the great shift instead of like maybe the resignation. But I think some of the other things this is what we've heard on this show, and that I've heard from other people, is like, there are other things like, hey, I really like this working from remote thing. Too Much Too in the channel said, there's more to life than just work, mate. We found out that, working remotely, we kind of like being closer to our families and not having to travel. I have to tell you, like, I am not itching to go back to work full time in the office, because my commute's an hour and a half each way a day. So I have a 3-hour commute every day. And, I didn't think about it because I've always had to drive a distance for work. And then the last 9 years I've been doing this commute. But when I was working remote 100%, and then now I'm going back a couple of days a week, I went, wow, is this a big waste of my time?
Yeah, right. And all of a sudden it's in your face, just how much time you were spending in the car.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people are dealing with that. So, and that's definitely a contributing factor. Is my current employer, are we employing a new hybrid scenario, or are we all back on site just like how things were before, or do I have flexibility? Because I think at the end of the day, what's been interesting, and like, you can read all the reports and read all the surveys, but it's not necessarily that people want to all be working remote 100% all the time, because people do want to still see other people. They miss the human factor. They just want to do it on their own terms.
Right.
So I think that if people start thinking about, okay, instead of just like, we need to create this policy that's going to work across the board for everybody, that's probably not going to happen. But instead, think about, how can we let our employees like dictate, or not dictate, that's a bad word, but choose their schedule, have their own ability to, have a say in it, or,
and some of the
people
terms,
just want flexibility.
Yeah. And some of the terms I don't like, the overused terms, but it's like work-life balance, but it's true.
Well, it's true. And it's more important than ever,
Yeah.
Like,
that's what I mean. Like,
really,
whatever you want to, I heard somebody call it work-life integration, because sometimes you do work at life and sometimes you do life at work. And so what I was getting to is, I think one of the big things is corporate or company culture. Like, people are looking for I'll tell you, there are places that frown upon working remotely because, and I've heard employers say this, they don't trust their people to work remotely. Now, I know I've had conversations with people, I'm probably including you, that's saying, the people you can't trust are working remotely, you probably can't trust them working in the office either, unless you're micromanaging, and then you're probably not doing your job, but the corporate culture. So people are thinking like you said, I love working. I don't think I really enjoy working remote 100%. I like the interaction, but if my commute's going to be that long, and I live out in the suburbs, there's not a whole lot of necessarily jobs for what I do, like really close to where I live. So I'm willing to take that hour and a half commute each way, as long as I don't have to do it 5 days a week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
No. And I think the other thing we talked about was because I guess we've in the last, I don't know, whatever decade, 2 decades, we've talked about a global world. It can't get much more global than it is now, because on the employer side, you can have employees anywhere and everywhere.
Right. So if you open that up at your organization, I mean, you're tapping into the best of the best, on a global footprint, and that's remarkable, and that's. So but and I hate to put a blanket on it, because I know that it's different for every organization, and depending on what you do. A lot of roles in tech, though, you can do from home, and it's kind of like, well, you got to look at your own team, you got to look at your company, you got to look at your culture and what's important to your employees, and maybe it starts with asking your employees, hey, what matters the most to you guys? Is it pay? Is it PTO? Is it benefits? Is it feeling fulfilled, and that, we care about you, and that we care about your health and your well-being, and giving you the flexibility that you need? Like, that stuff is way more important than it ever was before. And it's not just about salary and PTO.
No. Yeah, definitely
it's at all, especially then you talk about like Gen Z, they've never cared about that. Yeah. So a lot of these things were already here. These were already things, and I don't want to say challenges, but just things that we kind of needed to start thinking about how we're going to adapt to. And, here we are today. I think the last year and a half's really pushed a lot of it forward faster.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And speaking of fast, like this whole thing of like the Gen Zers and everything they bring in the Gen X, Gen Zers, millennials, uh, they're pushing technology, and technology is changing at a very fast rate because of this. Some people in the IT industry, at least, I know you can even say this about the fast food industry. There's a worry about elimination of jobs because of technology, whether it's the automated robots pouring your soda in the restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's chat bots and answering help desk calls and things like that. So is this really true? I mean, are we really seeing a lot of job eliminations and people losing their job, or is it something
We're
else?
not. Look at the numbers, right? So if there's ever been more proof of that fear, not being, necessarily a real thing, I mean, obviously some roles potentially down the road become more obsolete, but I mean, ultimately, like with all the changes and the rapid pace of the involvement of everything, I mean, it's only creating more and more jobs in tech.
Yeah. So
It's
that's
the
what I wanted to ask
opposite.
you. Like, so I agree that it's probably eliminating some work, but I'm hearing that, like, I know in where I've been worked a lot of companies, and we eliminate work or jobs, but not people. Like, we don't eliminate people. So I'm guessing like this we're seeing new jobs or new careers coming at the same
Mhm.
type of pace, right?
Right. I mean, people that, maybe if your job might not necessarily, maybe whatever you're doing 10 years ago in IT, it might not necessarily be, um, you know, front and forward with what's going on right now in tech. I mean, as long as you're staying up to date and you're staying on top of the latest trends and you're educating yourself and taking advantage of whatever training and upskilling your organization provides. And, if not, like looking to see what you can do on your own, because there's a lot you can do on your own, just through self-learning and
That is
whatnot
so
out there.
true. And it's so
And
easy
it's
to do
really
that
important.
now, right? Like
Yeah,
for this
it
show,
really
you can go
is.
on YouTube or Twitch and learn stuff new, right? Speaking
Oh,
of which, Kelly, we are at the end of the show. I told you this would go quick. Yeah, yeah. So,
I didn't even get to ask you how the chickens are doing.
well, they've doubled in size. They're not little chicks anymore. They look like little miniature chickens. If you're familiar, they look like quail or like stuff like that. They're like
Oh, that's
little,
okay.
yeah.
Usual, yeah.
And unfortunately, we've got three new big birds in our neighborhood. Those hawks that are kind of like checking them out. But hey, before we go though, Kelly, I want to ask you, like, is there any like tip or any advice you want to leave with people before we go?
I guess it's really, if you're an employer and you're concerned or you want to make sure you're staying ahead of this stuff, just think about your employees and what's important to them, and what can you do to make sure whatever you're doing for the future is based on what they care about.
And
And
I think,
meeting.
yeah, and they should share their concerns too. There is like, I know there was some of these big firms, these big companies that were talking about, well, we lose collaboration. So share that with your employees. Say and you could brainstorm and come up with, meeting, to kind of make it
Yeah,
a win-win
what
for
are other people
everybody,
doing,
right?
right? Exactly.
So, well, Kelly, it is the end of the show. So for everybody out there, the audience, I have on the screen Kelly's uh, email address, website, and LinkedIn address for her company and herself, as well as I want to bring to the attention of our Twitch channel, our YouTube channel, because we do upload this to YouTube the next day, as well as you can find us on LinkedIn. And by the way, if you're interested in either being a guest on our show or sponsoring our show or even joining our production team behind the scenes, hey, I could, maybe I could retire and get a new show host. Email me at tomwilkhdi@gmail.com and we'll get you in touch with the right people to make all those things happen if possible. Kelly, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you.
Everybody out there, remember to like us on YouTube and Twitch and follow us at hashtag HDI Local. And by the way, I'm taking a much needed week off, so we will not have a live show next week. Although my production team is kind of teasing me I'm going RVing up to the PA Grand Canyon, and they were teasing me to maybe do some bits from my trip on GoPro. So I thought, well, it depends. If people
You
really
won't
want
do
to see it
it.
and they chatter up in the chats of Twitch or YouTube, maybe I'll do that. We'll see. But otherwise, we'll see you in 2 weeks. I believe that's the 22nd. I think the 22nd of September. Until then, everybody enjoy. We'll see you out there and stay safe. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.